Good morning.
Close the door strong.
She's going the wrong way. Okay, if you could stand if you're able to and turn to 617. 617. Great and mighty. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty is He. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty is He. Lift His banner, let the earth all praise. Praise to Almighty King. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty is He. Sing to Jesus with a song of praise. Sing to Jesus with praise. Sing to Jesus with a song of praise. Sing to Jesus with praise. Fill the heavens with a mighty voice. Bless His name, let all rejoice. Sing to Jesus with a song of praise. Sing to Jesus with praise. Amen. You may be seated.
Okay, Numbers. We are at number 8 on our list, and we're going to begin at what's called victory. The crossing of the Red Sea. What is that a type of?
Baptism? No.
If it is baptism, where is that? There a baptism that says that in the New Testament? I can picture it's the right column of the left page near the bottom, I think. It could be Hebrews. It talks about a baptism, and I believe it's when they go through the Red Sea. It does do that.
The drowning of Pharaohs, or the
Well, a type of something that's going to happen for you and I.
I was going to say Jews.
The baptism of the Egyptians.
Going through the Red Sea, type of the
Jews
tribulation.
going through the tribulation. And then making it to the promised land.
Well, I always thought the passing through the Red Sea is a type of our salvation. Then we wander through this wilderness, and then what's the next big event? The rapture, which is what? Into the promised land, which is the crossing of what?
The Jordan.
The Jordan. How many cubits were between the priests?
How about 666?
Well,
You know, those are good guesses. Those are really good guesses. I mean,
2,000.
it's 2,000 cubits. So it lines up, and I know that
I
all kinds
remember.
of people are going to just
I remember.
balk at
2,000.
that. So it's 2,000, lines up with like 2,000 years.
It was not a guess. I remember.
2,000 years. So crossing of the Jordan then into the promised land, you know, people can argue, well, they still fought in the promised land, and well, there's no perfect types in the Bible, they're just types. So the crossing of the Jordan would be a type of the rapture and us going into the other side. Now, on this, where it says victory, do you have that in your notes? Let me see what we have here. Yeah, victory. Chapters 21 through 36. Now, 36. Let's see here. That is the last chapter. That takes place in 9 months and 10 days. And then Deuteronomy, how long does that take? And then when Joshua shows up, they go over. How long does Deuteronomy take? What's the time span there?
5 years.
No, I think it's 1 month. And it's a recap. They recap everywhere they went and all their wanderings, recap the second giving of the law. It's the second giving of the law. They recap the events that took place, and a lot of things are said in Deuteronomy, and then they pass over. Now, does it appear as though that the rapture is near? When you look at the pandemic, you look at worldwide events, things that are going on, especially in the United States, and we say the majority of Christians are here. We're talking about not worldwide that have lived before us. I'm talking about right now that are still alive. We could say wherever the gospel has gone, prosperity and the true gospel came here, and now there's waning in that. And does it seem like we're getting victories? Or does it sound like defeat? Well, if this is near the passing, the 9 months out of 40 years of wandering around, 9 months and 10 days, near the end, chapters 21 through 36, at the end here, just before we pass over, if it lines up with our walk, then we should be getting some victories. There should be some victories that folks, we're not losing. And you look at the 10 plagues, the Christians suffered, the Israelites suffered with, I believe, the first 3 plagues. Then after that, the land of Goshen was free from all that. And right at the end there, man, the Egyptians just got nailed. So I don't think we should be down in saying all is lost. There's everything to gain. And that we should be getting victories. I don't know, I thought about that while we were playing the piano there. Chapter 21, let's turn there. Victory over King Herod, verses 1 through 3. And when King Herod the Canaanite, which dwelt in the south, heard tell that Israel came by the way of the spies, then he fought against Israel, took some of them prisoners. And Israel vowed a vow unto the Lord and said, if thou wilt indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Israel, delivered up the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them in their cities. And he called the name of the place Hormah. So they had victory there. So we say that Numbers is the time of testing of a nation. And whenever Israel's having problems, that's usually where you go, where they have sinned and messed up. But man, there's some victories along the way, folks. We need to claim those. A victory over King Sihon and King Og, verses 33. If you would turn to chapter 21, we're in 21. Verses 31 through 35, specifically verse 33. And they turned and went up by the way of Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, went out against them, he and all his people, to the battle of Edrei. And the Lord said unto Moses, fear him not, for I have delivered him into thy hand, and all his people, and his land, and thou shalt do to him as thou didst unto Sihon, king of the Amorites, king of the Amorites, which dwelt at Heshbon. So they smote him. So that's King Og. And verse 21 in the same chapter, Israel sent messengers unto Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, let me pass through thy land. We will not turn into the fields or into the vineyards. We will not drink the waters of the well, but we will go along by the king's highway until we pass the borders. This may line up with, they said if they did partake of it, that they would what? What's the 3-letter P word? If they went off the king's highway and partook. A 3-letter begins with pay. Begins with pay.
That stands for P.
Which stands for P, that they will pay for it. Anytime you venture off the King's Highway and you partake in the world, you're paying for it. That stuff's all in there. It makes for great preaching. You will pay the price if you go off of the King's Highway and you decide to participate in this life. You will pay for it. We've all done that. Pay along the way,
Pay through the nose.
and you pay through the nose.
I found my Bible reference,
Oh, what was that?
1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 1 and 2. Moreover, brethren, I would not that you be ignorant how that our fathers were under the cloud and passed
There it
through
is.
the sea, and all were baptized down to Moses in the cloud and in the sea.
That's it. That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a New Testament verse that does support that. Now, I know Peter S. Ruckman, he preaches that there's 7 baptisms in the Bible, and he would say that would be one of those, 7 baptisms.
Without faith, it's worthless.
And I've talked to one specific preacher, I've mentioned that to, when I was over in Institute, and they said, I don't see that, I don't even know where he gets that. Well, they need to study it out. Maybe there's not 7, but there's more than one. I mean, there's one right there. When the same preacher, when I preached on the books, Elmer preached on the books, and the books that are found in, and they opened the books. And some preachers say this is the only book, but I say there's other books. The Book of Remembrance. Anybody know other books? There's God's book here, the Book of Remembrance. The Lamb's Book of Life. Depending on how you view that, could be the Bible. And then I know some say that everybody's name is recorded in there. You know, they have these numbering systems. And those that are messing with it, that they have gone as far as to say they remove their name out of the book by messing and changing the words in there. Yeah.
I think it says, though, the names that were written before the foundations of the world.
Yeah, but they still go and change it. They're changing this book. Well, anyway, the Lamb's Book of Life, the Book of Remembrance. I think there's 5 of them. Anybody else want to have? There's the Book of Prayers.
Is there a book of knowledge?
There's the little book that they held up. The Book of. That is actually the name of an encyclopedia.
The book of Jeremiah.
Boy, that I think I include that in that sermon. That's thrown in the Euphrates. Which is this book?
It was sweet to the taste and sour to the.
Well, that's a little book. It shows up, I think, Old Testament, New Testament. Anyway, there's more than one book. And the same preacher said, I don't see that all. I don't know. They kind of get rid of a lot of good preaching as far as I'm concerned. All right, chapter 31. Go to chapter 31. And that is victory over Midian, the Midianites. The Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Avenge the children of Israel of the Midianites. Afterward shalt thou be gathered unto thy people. And Moses spake unto the people, saying, Arm some of yourselves unto the war, and let them go against the Midianites, and avenge the Lord of Midian. So they arm people and go out and go after the Midianites. Who would be the people that don't go out? That don't go out to the war? In other places, they don't go out to war.
The Nabal king,
I'm talking about the children of Israel.
David.
Some reasons why they didn't. If they were too weak, the women, those that were weak and the women and children, where did they stay? They stayed by the stuff. They stayed by the stuff. They guarded the stuff. There were other reasons not to go to war. If you were newly married, you didn't go to war. For how long?
2 years.
I think it's 1 year. I think it's 1 year. Is that he was supposed to stay home and comfort his wife and cheer her up. another reason not to go to war was if you didn't want to go to war, you stayed home. Anyway, you got victory over King Arad, you got victory over King Shihon, King Og, and the Midianites over Midian. Balaam and Balak, Numbers 22 through 25. Go to Numbers 25, verses 1 through 9. Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. And they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat, bowed down to their gods. Why were they not permitted to intermingle?
To keep the seed pure.
Well, the priests, to keep the priesthood pure, and then they could, if you couldn't prove your heritage when they came back, you could come back, but you couldn't serve. You had to be able to go to the records, the genealogy, prove that you were a priest, to keep that pure.
Well, the unbelievers would be a thorn in their eyes.
And in what way?
Cannot get along.
No, it would turn that, you would be tempted to be turned to their gods.
Yeah.
All right? You'd be tempted. Give me a good verse on that in the New Testament. Be ye not unequally yoked with unbelievers. That's a good verse for that. All right. Israel, verse 3, joined himself unto Baal Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. All right. They were to, verse 2, and they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat and bowed down to their gods. So, so that was the doctrine of the Balaam and Balak, is that they joined themselves unto unbelievers. Deuteronomy 4, verse 3. Your eyes have seen what the Lord did because of Baal Peor. For all the men that followed Baal Peor, the Lord thy God had destroyed them from among you. All right, by joining with unbelievers. Numbers 31. The council was still there even after his decease. Numbers 31, verses 1 through 20. I don't feel led to read all that. I don't feel led to do that. That's, again, the destruction of the Midianites. Phinehas was of the royal seed of priests, and he killed one that had joined himself unto unbelievers. They did the same thing in Nehemiah, too, in separating that. Verses 10 through 18. Phinehas, verse 11, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, hath turned my wrath away from the children of Israel, while he was zealous for my sake among them, that I consume not the children of Israel in my jealousy. All right, so he goes. Verse 14, now the name of the Israelite that was slain, even that was slain of the Midianitish woman, was Zimri, the son of Salu, a prince of the chief house among the Simeonites. And the name of the Midianitish woman that was slain was Cosbi, the daughter of Zur. He was head over a people in a chief house in Midian. So she was of great importance back then. So I guess in this country, who would you not marry? Thinking of the history of America. Pardon? No, Muslims don't live here. Indians. And then who would, not Miles Standish, what's Captain Cook, not Captain Cook. I can't think of who came over here. John Smith, who did he marry? He married Pocahontas. How old was Pocahontas? All these falsehoods and all. Man, when you finally read these stories, she saves his life, doesn't it? I think she pled for him. And the chief was going to kill him, and she pled for him. I thought she was only 9 or 10 when they met. I think Pocahontas goes back to England. Yes.
I read something about that recently, and he was married, and his wife died, and they got married later, like she was...
Later.
She went over to England and married him, you know.
She went to England,
Yeah.
got educated or learned the language, and like Squanto. I think, was Squanto, was he
Yeah.
captured?
Yeah.
He was captured and taken over. That's always the fear of intermingling like that. And that's also another sign of the last days, folks. It's a return to the Tower of Babel. Is everybody's going to get together, we're all going to be one color, all speak the same Babylonian gibberish. Pardon? That's what they're doing now. Now, how does everybody speak the same Babylonian gibberish? Where do they do that?
Google.
Oh, well, yeah, probably Google. Where do they actually do that? Yeah, what tower? Where? The UN, United Nuts. They do that at the UN. So when somebody is speaking, I don't know how it's done. I don't know if it's done with a computer or if they have personal people that can interpret that immediately. But everybody's understanding the same gibberish all at one time. And it's being spoken in their language. So that kind of stuff, technology, they're doing that now. They're doing that now. All right, Jude 11, going to the New Testament here.
I had a comment on Squanto.
Squanto, go for Squanto. I'd like to hear about Indians.
The Lord prepared Squanto for the saving of the pilgrims. Because he sent him over, he was took back as slave to England, and he learned English and got real smart and came back on another ship, escaped.
And what would be the final goal of all that? Saving Squanto, getting Pocahontas, going at it. What would be the final? What's the goal of all that?
Maybe race relations?
No, no.
The greater glory of God.
Yeah, but why? Why would he do all that? I mean, people just have poochy lip disease about all this stuff. Why does he do all that?
Because God
I mean, these people, folks, I've got relatives who want to tell me that the Indians are really wonderful people, that we messed them all up, and this, that, and the other. I didn't live back there. I wasn't scalping people. What's the end game that God has for all of this? What's the end game?
preservation of the remnant.
No, to get people saved. Spread the gospel. If Squanto was able to make peace between white man and the Redskins, and get that going, to keep it going. So Jonathan Edwards, he gets fired. The church fired that guy. I think he only pastored for 10 years. They fire him. And then he goes out to the Indian as a missionary. I think he was there for 10 years. He then becomes the, not chancellor, he becomes the, he ran Yale or Harvard. Jonathan Edwards went there. And he was only there for a short while. What did Jonathan Edwards get? What happened to Jonathan Edwards? He died shortly after that. What did he get? I'm pretty sure I got my story straight. Anybody know? He got smallpox. He died. He died. But then all these people then get to hear the gospel. In some of these westerns, they make fun of the evangelist that goes on. In the Last of the Mohicans, reading accounts of that. And so it doesn't matter what side you're on. Who was on the English side? There's the English and the French. Anybody know who's on the English side? What Indians? English side and French side. Nobody knows? Even if it's a fictional story. The Hurons are on the French. And I think the last of the Mohicans, they're on the British. But the Indians the French befriended the Indians. They were kind to them, so they were allied. What would you call that? They had an alliance. Confederated. Oh, that's a word you can't use. They were confederate with the French. Were there missionaries that were French? Well, I read the battle where Three Rivers Stadium is. What is that? Three Rivers.
Port Pitt.
Port Pitt. I wanted to go to Port Pitt. You can't even get in there.
Port.
I wanted to go to Fort Pitt. I wanted to get in there. You can't even park your car in Pittsburgh. We couldn't wait to get out of there. It was the most confusing place I've ever been. We couldn't even figure out how to get out of town. And we Googled that thing with the girl that tells you how to get out. Man, she had us going in circles. We couldn't even get out of Pittsburgh. And we wanted to go to the fort. And you couldn't park there. I didn't even know how it's a tourist attraction. We couldn't figure out even how to get there. But in reading accounts of that, the battle in the French-Indian War, there were missionaries there. That the one missionary, he had to go, he finally went to bed because what were the Hurons doing with the English that they captured? Anybody know what they were doing to them? Take a guess. Well, they weren't embalming them. They weren't scalping them. They were burning them. They burned them at the stake. They burned people. He said the screams were so great he just finally had to go to bed. But the point is this. There's just as many missionaries with the French trying to win people to the Lord. And on the other side, with the English, there's missionaries trying to win people to the Lord. So there's missionaries on both sides. If God doesn't take sides, he only has one side, his side. So he doesn't care which side is witnessing, just as long as they're witnessing. They're all witnessing. Do you think the Germans weren't witnessing to each other? Somehow, even with the Nazis there? Somehow they were trying to witness. Somebody was. Somebody was trying to witness. All right, so Jude 11. If we go to Jude 11. Woe unto them, I've kind of got off the beaten track here. For they have gone in the way of Cain and ran greedily after the heir of Balaam. That's intermingling with heathen. And they did it for gain. They got paid for it. There's money involved in it. It's called the gainsaying of Kor, also in another place. 2 Peter 2:15, which is a preface to this. The way we describe 2 Peter chapter 2 is almost verbatim Jude. Is the end days, the way we do this, 2 Peter 2, the end days are coming. And Jude, the way we interpret it, it's almost verbatim, word for word, is one, it is coming. In Jude, it's already here. That's the difference between the two books. Verse 15, when they have forsaken the right way, gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Bosor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. Now in my side column, I put down Jude 11, which we already read. Deuteronomy 23 is probably the place, and we'll go there, probably where maybe Balaam is actually killed. And then Nehemiah 13 is the ongoing struggle that hundreds of years later they're still going on because they're intermingling with, but who would they be intermingling with? What would have been, what are the two kingdoms? The kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of... you know what? It's Israel and Judah. But what was the capital of it? That's what I want, that word, the capital of Israel. The capital of Judah is Jerusalem. Capital of Israel, the 10 lost tribes, is what? And so they're battling it out with the Samaritans. which would be considered the half-breeds. Those would be the half-breeds. And so that's what, when Nehemiah comes back, Ezra, he builds the temple. And that takes about 70 years. Nehemiah comes back, he builds the wall, and it's still ongoing. And the Samaritans are the ones, and Jesus then meets the woman at the well, the Samaritan, and they're the despised people, the half-breeds, and they always have this conflict going on. Folks, all that racial stuff, that conflict stuff, it's been going on since day one, man. It's been going on. Psalm 106. Now, if you go to the Psalms, and Psalms 106 may be one of them, there is a psalm that recaps basically the entire Old Testament. Psalm 106, verses 28 and through 31. Now, and this may be the psalm that recaps, like Stephen's apology in Acts 7, where he recaps the Bible leading right up to Jesus. Verse 28, they joined themselves also unto Baal Peor and ate the sacrifices of the dead. Thus they provoked him to anger with their inventions, and the plague broke in upon them. And stood up Phinehas. We already read about Phinehas, executed judgment, so the plague was stayed. And that was counted unto him for righteousness unto all generations forevermore. All right. Deuteronomy 23. And his final fate is Joshua 13. We'll end up there. Let's find out what Deuteronomy 23 says. Deuteronomy 23. Verse 4, because they met you not with bread and with water in the way, when you came forth out of Egypt, because they hired against the Balaam, the son of Beor of Bethor, of Mesopotamia, to curse thee. By the way, is there a Mesopotamia in Ohio?
Yes.
It's due east of here, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All right. They hired against them Balaam. All right, so he does it for dough. He wants to, as it says there, to get God to turn from Israel. But the only thing he was able to do is get Israel to turn from God. He couldn't do the other. Was unable to do the other. Let's just take them in order here. Joshua 13, verse 22. So the New Testament church, what was their main problem? Who did they have most of their problems from? The New Testament church. And yes, Judaizers. Judaizers infiltrate the church, saying you got to keep the law in order to be saved, be circumcised, and so on. What is the problem in the church now? They come in, they worm their way in, man. Jude talks about it right from the get-go. He was coming he was coming to them with the doesn't call it the simple gospel. He calls it, these people, they says they crept in unawares.
Jude.
The common salvation. That's what he was going to do. For there are certain men crept in unawares. He wanted to preach on the common salvation, but he goes for these that creep in. What creeps in today? It's not Judaizers. That's long over. Judaizers, that business is long over, trying to have you keep the law. I'm sure there's groups out there. Sammy Davis Jr. became one, didn't he?
Yeah.
He converted to Judaism. He became a Jew. He converted. And so they creep in. They want you to speak in tongues. If you don't speak in tongues, you're not saved. All kinds of weird doctrines. And they use the Bible to prove these doctrines. Prove these doctrines. And so on. They come into the church. Joshua 13, verse 22. Balaam also the son of Beor, the soothsayer, did the children of Israel slay with the sword among them that were slain by them. When they went in there, they killed him. A soothsayer. What was a prophet called back then? It said back in the old days, the prophet, the preacher, what was he called? He had another name. Just for fun, what was he called? Pardon? No, never was. How many times does reverend show up in the Bible? One time. And it says, reverend is his name. Only one time in the Bible called reverend, and it's only in respect to God only, never to a preacher, ever. If people say that to me, I don't correct them. I say, well, because that's how most people think. But reverend is only one time in the Bible. Only one time. He was called a, it would be in the days of Saul too. It starts with an S. I can't think of it right now. See here, it was that said he's a soothsayer. Another name for the preacher was a, with all these minds scrolling their Rolodex, and we can't come up with it. I can't think of it right now. He was a, oh, I almost said it. He was a seer. He's called a seer. A seer. I think S-E-E-R. It's one and the same. It's not a bad word. We tend to, if you're watching Walt Disney, it might be a wizard, you know. That's bad. A seer in the Bible is a good thing. And those words ended up, that ended up stopping those words. All right.
The Holy See, part of the seer thing?
Yeah, you know, I don't know why. The Holy See, when you think of the sea or a flood, they're talking about people. Now that thing, and by the way, what do they call him? This is all demonic, man. They call him, pardon? A potentate. How many times is that in the Bible? Once, in reference to Christ. He's a potentate. Jesus is called the bishop. He's a bishop. And the Pope, they make him, his name, he's the, well, the name they give him is a name above that name. It's a name above the name that Christ takes. All right, anyway, his final fate,
Holy Father.
Holy Father, yeah, that's, only God is called that.
You're not talking about Vicar of Christ, are you?
No.
Because he ain't using that title no more.
Yeah, where does that appear, by the way? On that, what do they call that thing he wears? A mitre. A mitre.
Tiara.
All right.
Crown.
Revelation 2:14. But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. All right, eat the things sacrificed to idols, and to intermarry. And to intermarry, because these people they would intermarry with would then turn them away from the true God and turn them to their God. That's why that is forbidden. And he is killed in Joshua. They go out, when they cross over, they get him. They get him. All right, let's move on here. Number 10 here. The second census, it decreases 1,820 since chapter 1. Chapter 1, now I told you I was at the Cleveland clinic, and they jerked me around from one department to another. I must have spent almost all day there trying to get cured of something that I could have cured all on my own. Those doctors had absolutely no clue as to what was wrong. And all I had to do was disconnect that wood burner in my house, and I was cured overnight. I had that thing in there for 20 or 30 years. So chapter 1, there's 603,550. And I said I counted them up because I had nothing to do there. I counted them up, I added them up, and entered in my Bible. By chapter 26, the difference is 1,820. So the second census, the number decreases. It decreases. The laws of inheritance, chapter 27. Go back to Numbers 27. Numbers 27, verses 1 through 11. I don't feel led to read it. It's about the daughters that have no husbands, and they lose their inheritance, because that inheritance goes to the male. By the way, when did that change? That's the law. When did all that change? Now, I'm not positive of all this. I think a lot of that change in English law is the oldest son got the money now, and then he would get I believe the oldest son got a double portion. What was he to do with that double portion? Dad died. He gets the double portion.
Take care of the daughters,
Take care of mom. Take care of, it could be take care of daughters, take care of mom. He received a double portion. Now, it doesn't specifically say what he's supposed to do with it, but he gets a double portion. So the idea would be that he probably was to take care of the wife, his mother, and those that could not support themselves. But what happens to men? They are very what? They're greedy. And so a lot of these English laws, who's always left out in the cold? Who gets left out? Mom gets left out. The wife gets left out. Sisters get left out. They get cut out of the action. So then what happens is that now we got all these laws because men are greedy, and it changes that, and now other people have the upper hand. Then it gets to be a whole. It's like a pit of snakes. It gets so confusing and so messed up with authority. And it's all out of whack. And Jesus has got to come back to straighten it all out. So the law of inheritance, if the girl couldn't get her inheritance, Moses said, you girls bring up a good thing because you lose your inheritance. And so through this, they keep their inheritance. If it married out of the tribe, because they had to keep it within that tribe. If there was no man in there to keep the inheritance, it ended up going where it shouldn't have gone. And so he says, yes, you're right. That needs to stay there. All right, Matthew 1:11. Matthew 1:11. This would be these genealogies here. Matthew chapter 1, verse 11. And Josias begat Jeconias and his brethren about the time they were carried away to Babylon. If we read Numbers 36 on the law of inheritance, 2 through 3, I have it marked in my notes through 13, that would have shown up there. Anyway, while we're here, and we're over the time, while we're here, Genesis 5:1, the book of the, what's the next word? The book of the
Generations of Adam.
generations, plural, of Adam. Why is it plural? Because all in Adam died. Matthew 1:1, since we're at Matthew 1, the book of the generations, singular, because all in Christ live. What Bible is that found in? I believe it's only in the King James Bible. You go to another Bible, you get so twisted and so goofed up. All right, so all in Adam die. That's why it's generations. It's the only Bible this appears in. And the book of the generation of Jesus Christ is because all live. How many women are in the genealogy? How many women are mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus Christ? Bus says 5. 4. Do I hear? It's 4. I'm pretty sure it's 4. And right now I can't think of all 4 of them. How many of them are not sinners that you can't find a sin on that person? I mean, a blatant sin.
Mary.
Rahab is a sinner, the harlot. I think it's Boaz. Who did Boaz married? Ruth. She's not a blatant sinner. She's the only one where you can't point and say, she is bad. Solomon's mother, Bathsheba's name. The wife of
Uriah.
Yeah, help me out there. I'm kind of.
That's who David had. And
Okay, the wife of Urias.
she killed Uriah.
Is Bathsheba.
There's Bathsheba.
The wife of Uriah.
The wife of, that's the wife of Urias.
Yeah.
Okay. Bathsheba, Rahab, Ruth.
Tamar.
Pardon?
Tamar.
Tamar, who ended up, it was with her father-in-law. I mean, just one big mess. What that teaches is in salvation, God accepts sinners. Only sinners can be saved. And then through Bathsheba, what color do we assume Bathsheba is? I'm pretty sure. I don't think I'm wrong. If you go back to Moses and all that, it teaches that God accepts all races. There's a black person involved in that. God accepts all that. All right, God accepts that. God accepts sinners that repent, trust Christ. So we will pick this up. We'll pick it up here.
I always thought that she was a Jew.
Well, I'm not saying all my ducks got in a row there.
I never
There,
gave
but
much
there's
thought.
there's a black one in there that it shows that God accepts that, and only sinners can be saved. So the one that you would expect not to be the sinner is the one that isn't a sinner, and that's Ruth. Even though we know that all men sin, that Ruth is a sinner. All right, we will start there next week. Now listen, everybody loves stories. I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it this morning. Instead of just preaching my sermon, I'm going to tell about 4 or 5 stories. So we'll begin with that, and so we'll preaching in 15 minutes. Father, now bless now the preaching to follow in Christ's name. Amen.